你让我来救你的命。
还有一位，也请现身吧。
这次猎杀天魔教主，江湖上的同道几乎都出动了。
最好说声请字。
既然来杀我，为何还要见礼？
After that, Qinmu transformed into the form of Yinghuo Star-Lord, shattering the Buddha manifested by the opponent's cultivation technique and forcing him to withdraw his move. Over there, the monk's eyes suddenly lit up. He immediately erupted with power and sprinted across the cloud layer. With every step he took, a white lotus blossomed beneath his foot, supporting his body and allowing him to accelerate further. Within the sea of clouds, the treasure vessel flickered in and out of sight. Qinmu glanced back. The monk was charging toward him at incredible speed, not slow at all. Those hunting him were all experts. Long Qiaonan and the woman surnamed Qu went without saying both were 7 Stars Realm divine arts practitioners. As for the scholar and the young monk, they were no ordinary figures either. Earlier, the scholar's sword orb had been shattered by Qinmu's Xiaobao sword. Even without a spirit weapon in hand, he had still caught the sword strike with his bare hands. Although his clothes had been slashed to tatters, he himself remained completely unharmed. The Xiaobao sword had once been the personal sword of a first-rank imperial official. Even though Qinmu could not yet unleash its full power, its sharpness was still astonishing. The fact that the scholar could withstand it showed that his strength was extraordinary. As for the burly monk, he was even more terrifying. He had directly blocked the spiral spear formation and only suffered an injury to his leg. His body had clearly been tempered to an extreme level. If Qinmu had not seen through that the great sun behind his head was the key point of the Vajra unconquerable art, the treasure vessel would likely have been forced down to the ground long ago. These two might not yet have reached the 7 Stars realm, but they were certainly Peak 6 Harmony's realm experts. Despite his injured leg, the monk was still rushing forward rapidly, nearly catching up with the treasure vessel. Linga, speed up. Hearing Qinmu's command, Hu Linga immediately activated the formation. The treasure vessel gradually accelerated and finally left the monk far behind. The burly monk watched the distance grow greater and greater before finally stopping and sighing. What a fast ship! However, Qinmu's expression darkened slightly. The monk and the scholar were both chasing him with their full strength, which meant they were certain he could not escape the encirclement. Qinmu knocked Yuanshan away and immediately inspected the treasure vessel. He saw that the hull had already been pierced by countless flying swords, riddled with holes like a honeycomb and severely damaged. Yuanshan, the sword cultivator from the Yuan-Gong sword sect, possessed extremely agile movement techniques. He had leapt about and stabbed relentlessly. His swordsmanship was sharp and eerie, but fortunately the hull was made of profound iron, which was extremely sturdy, allowing it to barely withstand the assault. Even so, the cabin had been punctured, greatly reducing the vessel's speed. Furthermore, the bow had earlier collided with a massive ice sword, tearing open a huge crack. When the vessel flew at full speed, wind rushed into the hull, slowing it down far more than when it was intact. If I could stop half a day would be enough to repair it. But those people won't give me that time. Fortunately, the Great Ruins isn't far away. Just as Qinmu thought this, Hu Linga's voice came from inside the cabin. Young Master, the bronze beast at the bottom of the ship, has had its head cut off. Is that serious? Qinmu was startled. It's fine. It'll just be a little bumpy when we land. How bumpy? The little fox poked her head out of the cabin and blinked as she asked. Qinmu looked puzzled. Why are you asking that? We've run out of spirit stones, Hu Linga replied briskly. Young Master didn't notice. The ship is falling. We'll have to land soon. Qinmu looked carefully and indeed saw that although the treasure vessel was still flying forward, it was slowly sinking through the sea of clouds. He immediately made a decision. Linga, wake that pig up. It's time for him to act. The Duty and Devil King immediately flew into a rage. You brat, who are you calling a pig? I've clearly been doing my best. Hu Linga glanced at him. I wasn't talking about you. Look at how sensitive you are. Young Master meant Longpan. Then she turned and called out, Longpan, wake up. Stop sleeping. The ship is about to fall. Young Master says it's going to be very bumpy. The dragon, Killin, slowly stood up and lazily crawled out of the cabin. Its enormous belly nearly dragged on the ground. It muttered unhappily. A few days ago, you were still calling me Long Da. Qinmu looked at the chubby Killin with some concern. Can this guy still fly? He quickly swept the remaining items in the cabin into the Taoti bag, and casually stuffed the Dutian Devil King inside as well. The mouth of the bag was too small, and only one leg could fit. Chinmu was about to dismantle the Devil King's body when the Dutian Devil King angrily shouted, "What are you doing? Don't break it. My consciousness is spread throughout this body. If you tear it apart, I'll be ripped apart too. Don't you know how to use that bag? Use your vital QI to activate the Taoti rune." Chinmu's eyes lit up. He immediately circulated his vital key and activated the Taoti pattern on the bag. In an instant, the bag's opening expanded into a massive Taoti mouth, 6 or 7 jang wide, swallowing the Dutian Devil King whole. Oh, this is much more convenient. Chinmu happily tied the bag at his waist and jumped onto the back of the Dragon Killin together with Hu Linga. Abandon the ship. Go. Flame clouds immediately formed beneath the Dragon Killin's feet as it leapt into the air from the falling treasure vessel. The Dragon Killin complained, "Sect Master, Sister Linga, you two have gotten heavier, much heavier than before." "You're the fat one," the little fox angrily snapped. "Look at that belly of yours. If you get any fatter, you'll be slaughtered for New Year." At that moment, boom, the treasure vessel behind them crashed into a massive mountain and shattered completely. The 3 alchemy cauldrons exploded simultaneously, producing 3 thunderous blasts. Fragments of profound iron and profound bronze shot everywhere, destroying a large stretch of forest. A dark mushroom cloud rose into the sky. Hu Linga stared at Chinmu in shock. "Young master, earlier you said the landing would be a little bumpy." Shimu nodded calmly. "Yes." Then he shouted, "Longpan Fatty, if you don't run faster, you'll be eaten before the New Year arrives." The Dragon Killin shuddered and immediately dashed forward like mad. The flame clouds beneath its feet surged violently, greatly increasing its speed. However, after running for just over 10 miles, it was already panting heavily. At that moment, more than a dozen mirrors suddenly appeared around them. These mirrors rose from the mountain peaks below. Each was octagonal and quickly surrounded them. The mirrors enlarged each over a jang wide, hovering about 100 jang away. The Dragon Killin sensed danger and lowered its body, but there was already a mirror blocking the way below. If it tried to fly upward, mirrors hung upside down above. Then, a streak of sword light shot from a mountain peak and struck one of the mirrors. Ding! The sword light was reflected to another mirror. The mirrors reflected each other continuously. From the mountain peaks, more and more sword lights flew over, bouncing endlessly between the mirrors. In just a moment, the sword lights wove into a gigantic net of swords. What a strange formation! Shaima shivered. This was a mirror reflection sword formation. Because the sword lights kept reflecting, almost no energy was lost. Instead, they grew denser and denser. But breaking it is simple, just shatter those mirrors. He waved his hand. The Xiaobao sword flew out and slashed toward one of the mirrors. But instantly, countless sword lights struck the Xiaobao sword. Clang, clang, clang. The sword was knocked away and fell into the forest. Chinmu's expression darkened. The cultivator's cultivation is far higher than mine. At least 6 harmonies realm, possibly 7 stars realm. At that moment, the Dragon Killin suddenly raised its head and roared. The roar sounded like 10,000 heavenly thunderbolts exploding at once. All the mirrors in the sky shattered simultaneously. The sword formation instantly collapsed. From a mountain peak below came a shocked voice. "This beast is truly formidable." Hearing the word beast, the Dragon Killin immediately became furious. It opened its mouth and spewed a gigantic pillar of flame. The mountain exploded instantly. The man was blasted away but did not die. He continued controlling sword lights to pursue them. The Dragon Killin immediately revealed its true body, more than 40 zhang long, sweeping its tail and shattering the sword lights. The sword cultivator cried out in horror. What a huge beast! The Dragon Killin grew even angrier and spat another colossal pillar of flame, tearing apart the cloud layer. A miserable scream echoed through the sky. It was unclear whether the sword cultivator lived or died. Sunlight immediately poured through the torn clouds. "Longpan is amazing," Hu Linga praised happily. But Chinmu looked up at the torn clouds with a heavy expression. Those who had chased him earlier, Long Qiaonan, the woman from Licking Palace, the monk, the scholar. In reality, they had only been the vanguard sent to test whether Chinmu had any powerful protectors by his side. Chinmu had deliberately chosen to flee without fighting. so that the mastermind behind them could not determine his true strength. But now, the dragon Killin had revealed itself, which meant even stronger enemies would soon make their move. Chema took a deep breath. Less than 1,000 li to the great ruins. Run. He cast aside all distracting thoughts and focused his entire mind on the demon summoning ritual. Suddenly, a beam of blood-red light shot straight into the sky, staining the snow-covered valley crimson as if fresh blood had been poured over it. The pillar of bloodlight rose more than 100 zhang high. Lightning roared around it, turning into coils of thunder that wrapped around the column. Crackling bolts shot in all directions. When the lightning struck the surrounding cliffs, the snow melted instantly, even the rocks began to melt, and streams of red-hot lava started flowing down the mountainsides. The thunder wove itself into a gigantic electric net surrounding the pillar of bloodlight. A terrifying demonic power from another world descended with a thunderous crash, striking directly into the statue on the altar. The wooden statue immediately cracked open, swelling and growing larger, rising higher and higher as its aura became increasingly terrifying. From the Taoti bag at Qin Mu's waist came the anxious and furious voice of the Dutian Devil King. "You brat, when you summoned the Jiahe demon god at the Imperial College, did you hold back? This time the demonic power from summoning the Calamity Demon God is far stronger." In truth, he had misunderstood Qin Mu. Back when Qin Mu summoned the Jiahe demon god, although he knew many demonic languages, he had not fully mastered them. After spending time digesting the demonic language he had learned from the contract with Tubo, he understood far more than before. That was why the ritual this time was much stronger. Across the valley, the old Taoist watched the terrifying scene. His expression was no longer calm. He swung his whisk. "Go!" The whisk in his hand suddenly lengthened. Thousands of strands expanded into sword-like threads, dozens of zhang long spreading across the sky. From afar, it looked like a gigantic rotating white umbrella. Each strand was a razor-sharp sword thread. The thinner they were, the harder they were to defend against. The whisk shot forward at astonishing speed, cutting apart countless bolts of lightning before appearing above the valley and severing the stream of demonic power, descending from the other world. Qin Mu immediately sensed the ritual about to collapse and shouted. The dragon Killin instantly soared upward with a thunderous roar. The roar shook the whisk, causing the threads to become disordered. The severed demonic power immediately reconnected and continued descending. When the old Taoist saw the dragon Killin, his eyes suddenly brightened. He sneered, "Young beast helping evil without knowing it. I see that you possess extraordinary divine bearing. If you submit and serve as my mount for 100 years, your sins may be washed away. Otherwise, your lifelong cultivation will turn to nothing." Beast. The dragon Killin immediately exploded in anger. It roared and gathered fire in its mouth before blasting out a gigantic pillar of flame. The old Taoist's body trembled as his vital ki erupted. Behind him appeared a tortoise-backed divine being more than 10 zhang tall. One hand held the whisk, which transformed into a massive white serpent, while the other hand pressed forward. Boom! The dragon Killin's flame pillar was stopped by the giant palm. Waves of fire burst outward, scorching the cliffs red. Celestial being realm. Qin Mu's heart sank. The dragon Killin charged forward, but the whisk suddenly recoiled in mid-air. Countless threads wrapped around its 4 legs, binding it tightly. The old Taoist laughed. "Little beast, will you submit now?" At that moment, Qin Mu slapped the Taoti bag. The bag opened wide and a 4-faced, 8-armed mechanical demon god jumped out. Each arm held a treasure, a zither, a pearl, a bow, an arrow, a Buddhist relic, a broken sword, a demon subduing staff, and a heavenly canopy tower. All of them were treasures Qin Mu had once stolen from the Lulang Golden Palace. The moment the Dutian Devil King was released, he understood Qin Mu's intention. If Qin Mu died, he would not escape either. Thus he had no choice but to fight desperately. The Devil King plucked the zither strings. A demonic melody rang out. The old Taoist's soul trembled and his heart devil stirred. He immediately formed the purity seal to suppress it. The tortoise-backed divine being behind him swung the white serpent whisk, creating a massive ocean-like wave crashing downward. The Dutian Devil King roared as all 8 treasures erupted with power. Boom! After a world-shaking collision, the Devil King was blasted away and slammed into the cliff. The white serpent whisk opened its mouth and swallowed him, smashing him into the mountain. "Little Taoist, You have no idea how terrifying the Dutian overlord is. The Dutian Devil King burst out of the mountain and raised the heavenly canopy tower. The tower expanded to hundreds of thousands of zhang and crushed downward. But the old Taoist merely pressed down with one hand. The Devil King and the tower were immediately forced flat onto the ground. At that moment, the bloodlight suddenly vanished. On the white bone altar, the bare-headed statue had transformed into 100 zhang demon god. He roared, "Lower world, prepare to receive the wrath of the Dutian Xiongbi, great demon god." Suddenly he noticed the Dutian Devil King lying beneath his feet. "Oh, old Dutian!" He burst into laughter. The mighty Dutian overlord reduced to such a miserable state. "Dutian's decline is all because of you, an incompetent fool." He stepped on the Devil King. "Summoner, where is the sacrifice?" Qinmu pointed straight ahead. Him. Xiongbi, great demon god, threw a punch. Boom! The old Taoist was blasted into the cliff. The demon god rushed forward to punch again. But a streak of swordlight pierced through his chest from behind. "This body won't break." Xiongbi laughed savagely. "It's only a demon god statue." At that moment, a streak of swordlight circled his neck 3 times. The demon god's head fell. On the cliff above stood a Confucian scholar in blue robes. Lu Wenshu, disciple of Kyungli sect, greets the Heavenly Saint sect master. He said calmly, "Senior, my intervention should not be considered excessive." Xiongbi laughed. "Another stray dog," Qinmu replied calmly. "The Kyungli master considers himself my equal, yet he did not come personally and only sent you. Clearly he looks down on me." Lu Wenshu said, "My master is occupied with great matters, saving the people of the world, assassinating the emperor." Qinmu asked coldly. At that moment, a white-robed Taoist nun appeared on another peak, Qingyu Sanren of Lingshu Palace. Soon after came Arhat Pushan and Luo Sanpo of the Beggar sect. In a moment, 5 celestial being realm experts stood surrounding the valley. Luo Sanpo laughed loudly. "Today we encircle and kill the Heavenly Saint sect master. This can be called the demon-slaying assembly for the protection of the Tao." Taoist Kuya shouted, "For the righteous path." The experts shouted together, "For the righteous path of the human world." The 5 celestial being realm experts attacked simultaneously. At that moment, the Xiongbi, great demon god, roared, unleashing all his power. Heavenly demon infinity. The valley shook violently. All the celestial being realm experts spat blood and were blasted backward. Behind the dragon, Qilin Qinmu poked his head out. The demon god still stood imposing. Hulinga cheered. "Qiongbi is amazing." But immediately afterward, the demon god's body began collapsing. "My energy is exhausted. Pity I couldn't eat the sacrifice. But it was worth it, seeing how miserable the Dutian Devil King is. Summoner, I'm leaving." Boom! The demon god exploded. Outside the valley, coughing could be heard. The experts had not died. Hulinga looked at Qinmu nervously. "Young master." Qinmu stood up, brushed off the dust, grabbed the Dutian Devil King, and tossed him onto the dragon Qilin's back. The young man's eyes shone brightly as he stored the 3 altars into the Tao Ti bag. Then he shouted, "Du Banrun." The dragon Qilin stepped on flame clouds and shot out of the valley. Qingyu Sanren forced herself to stand and launched a palm thunder strike. Lightning shaped like an azure dragon rushed forward, but due to her injuries, the strike veered off course, only blasting apart a distant mountain peak. Qinmu felt secretly shocked. Even wounded celestial being realm experts were still terrifying. Behind them, Lu Wenshu and Arhat Pushan struggled to stand still, shaken. They had underestimated the Xiongbi great demon god. Taoist Ku Ye was mortally wounded and died shortly after, which only deepened their hatred and determination to hunt Qinmu down. Meanwhile, Qinmu attempted to summon a second demon god while riding the dragon Qilin, but the ride was too bumpy and the ritual failed. After checking their condition, he found that he and Hulinga were unharmed. The dragon Qilin was merely exhausted. Only the Dutian Devil King had been beaten badly out of shape. Qinmu heated his body red-hot and hammered it back into shape. After examining the terrain, Qinmu finally relaxed. The Great Ruins was very close, only half a day away. However, the road back to Mishui Pass had been diverted. They could only take the old smuggling route of the Heavenly Saint sect through Kuji Ridge. Night fell. Ahead rose the majestic Shenduan mountain range, towering like a heavenly wall. Just as Qinmu planned to find a place to rest, he noticed a village with lights ahead. But after traveling several dozen more miles, another identical village appeared. Then a third, a fourth, all exactly the same. The dragon Qilin ran for hundreds of miles, yet the distance to the mountains never changed. The Dutian Devil King said in despair, "Someone has overlapped space. You can't escape." Chinmu gritted his teeth. Into the village. They descended. The village was quiet. Only a dog barked. An old man with white eyebrows holding a lantern stepped out and said calmly, "Heavenly Saint Sect Master, welcome. There are many empty rooms in the village. Please choose one and rest." Both the dragon Qilin and Hu Linga shivered. The old man knew Chinmu's identity. Chinmu thanked him and entered a large house. As soon as they entered, he whispered, "Do not speak. Go inside and sleep with your eyes closed." He hung on the wall a portrait of the village chief, painted by deaf grandpa to ward off evil, then lay down pretending to sleep. Not long after, footsteps sounded outside. The pursuing experts arrived one after another, drinking wine and celebrating, saying the Heavenly Saint Sect Master had fallen into their trap. Finally, the white-browed elder said, "It is time to send the Heavenly Saint Sect Master on his way." The courtyard gate opened. Lu Wenshu walked in first, smiling. "He's sleeping quite sound." Before he could finish, his head slid off his neck and fell to the ground. The experts outside rushed in, shocked. But the moment they stepped into the courtyard, heads began falling one after another. No one saw who attacked. As if an invisible god stood in the courtyard, silently swinging a sword and beheading anyone who dared step inside.